Everyone, welcome to the first ever video game jam post-mortem for Anthrotari. Today we're going to talk about what is a game jam, what is LU jam in particular. All right, what is Anthrotari? Who worked on this game, Anthrotari? What are some invaluable tools we use during the game production process? What are some takeaways? What are some tactical takeaways? Where you can get the game Anthrotari, and you can reach me after the talk. All right. Yeah, I don't see any captions just yet, so should I wait for those to get rolling? Yep. Okay, let's keep going for now. Okay. Right, so what is a game jam? Game jam is, the idea of making a game within a limited amount of time, usually 24 to 72 hours, usually with some kind of theme, and often with some kind of particular creative constraint. All right. Great example is Ludum Dare or Ludum Dare, however you pronounce it. You can get that Ludum, LUDUMDARE.com. It's a great example of a 24, 48, 72 hour game jam, both individual game jams and team game jams. But I want to know, why would someone do a game jam? Great example is just for the fun of it. Great example, just great time doing a game jam. Might do it just for a challenge to see if you can make an entire game within a really short space of time. Or in my case, you can do it just to prove to yourself you can do it. Right, and what is ILU Jam in particular? It's the International Love Ultimatum Jam, created by the great A Cosmos on Twitter. This is their second year running it here in 2016. Right, and this particular one is a month-long jam, so 30 whole days in June to actually make a game from scratch. The theme in this case was love. I went with self-love as that interpretation. Didn't have to be any particular genre, but I decided to go with the usual one of a visual novel. And so what is Anthrotari? In this case, it's a game about growing up as a queer furry on the early 90s internet. It's a visual novel, so if you've played any of the recently popular Otome games, or if you've played Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney, other ones like that, those are all visual novels. We have a story usually navigating sometimes linear, sometimes branching, sometimes interweaving stories. Usually not very much action, but a lot of writing. The cast consists entirely of queer furries, told to this case presented as if it was an online chat. You'll think Emily is Away is an explicit source of inspiration for the game. Ones like that. All right. See, the theme is definitely identity and embracing of identities. We have three starting characters in the original game: Donnie, Pixel, and Robin. Robin, genderqueer, struggling with identity. See, Pixel is getting to terms with her asexuality, and Donnie with being gay. All of them doing so through the context, interacting with the player character, Alex. So who worked on the game? Myself, JC Holder, producer, director, programmer, would-be writer, which we'll talk about more later. And that's my information right there. We have Ariel Grimes, a programmer out of Canada, and she provided UI design and UI art. But one reason the game looks so great. And she's also a professional jog wife. See her at slimecat.com/CV or slimecat on Twitter. Rory Francis, professional cartoonist in Seattle, Washington. He was our character art and design person. All right, you can see him puppytube.tumblr.com or puppytube on Twitter. Check out his comic, I forget what it's called, but look it up later. Got Emily E. Mio doing music. She's out of Austin, Texas. These locations are important. They'll come up later. All right, she did all the music and sound effects for Anthrotari. And you can find it at Emily E. Mio, MEO.com, or Emily E. Mio on Twitter. Okay. Next slide. First writer, Lane Farlight, freelance game developer, designer, and writer out of Washington. She's not being a magic girl. She's also writing for Anthrotari. You find her at lanefarlight.com or Lane Farlight on Twitter. LAINFARLIGHT. And our second writer, the inestimable Ellen McGrody, another freelance writer out of Oakland, California, and also a full-time Fox. She wrote where Lane did the routes between the main character and Donnie and Pixel. Ellen was responsible primarily for Robin's route. You can hear Ellen.zone or KatieBat on Twitter. Let's talk about some of the tools we used. Slack was invaluable in this case. I don't know how we could have gotten the game done in only 30 days without it. Because as I mentioned, describing the team, we have people in 3 different time zones on opposite coasts of the country, me coming out of New York. So if we had that kind of geographical interdependence available through Slack, this probably never would have happened. It's also very important for momentum because me being on the East Coast meant I was usually the first one to bed, first one up in the morning. So that would mean usually me getting a whole bunch of answers, questions to answer, and then having to send them all off first thing in the morning, and then the rest of the team get back to what they were doing when I left off. Also found the group chats and channels invaluable. For example, 2 writers, Ellen Lane, came up with all kinds of things and great discussions because there's a dedicated writing channel for just that. It's also really good for looking at files, not so much for storing them. I did find an issue with keeping track of different media assets, so I made a point of getting them off of Slack as soon as possible, or out of emails, case might be, into the other tool. We'll talk about it in a second. The other thing about Slack is it can be a great distraction, so make sure you're not trying to be on it constantly all the time. Even as a developer, even as a producer, I had to take time off from Slack, which I'll talk about more later. Another great tool is Dropbox. Because when you make a game, it's going to have a lot of files. I mean, a lot of files. Not just all the ones you'll finally deliver to the user, but all the raw files before it was compiled, all the intermediate versions of the files. So all the sketch work, all the draft songs, all the outlines for the story, a lot of things get to manage all at once and keep track of them. It can definitely be a bit of a bother doing versioning as well, which we'll come to later. One thing I really want to emphasize is how important it is to keep backups. We got lucky with Anthrotari insofar as we never had backup problems, but it very well could have happened. I mean, one of the conventions I had another talk at, they had lost a whole bunch of stuff because of ransomware right before the convention. So make sure you have local backups, like say a hard drive in your apartment, or offline backups somewhere like Carbonite or somewhere else, but not just Dropbox. Okay. Talk about GitHub, which you all love. Yeah. This wasn't so important for the art and music, but absolutely essential for the writing, because it was both prose to write and code, and ended up having the routes between different characters, Donnie and Pixel and Robin, all their stuff interacting in a way I certainly not at all planned, became absolutely essential that we'd be able to merge this code. It ended up being a bunch of RenPy code in a coherent way, especially because we had people working in very different schedules. We couldn't just, very rarely could actually just meet up, resolve conflict, move on. It had to be some sort of asynchronous discussion, and GitHub made that much easier. And finally, the most important software, perhaps, RenPy, the engine behind all of Anthrotari. It's a visual novel software designed just for that. It's open source, use it for free. Right, it has a very responsive developer who's always adding new features. That's RenPy Tom on Twitter. And it was just what our project needed. It's funny, I actually tried prototyping Anthrotari as a PK8 project. Made some good progress, but it definitely required way too much tooling for our particular game jam deadline. So even though I meant changing tools 2 weeks into the project, it was totally worth it. All right. Now, I want to talk about some strategic takeaways when it comes to game jams, particularly novel game jams, or anyone where there's going to be a lot of writing. So Twine is going to come up as well. You want to write as much as you can first, because like with a software project, that's basically your design spec, especially the outline. And you'd be amazed how much stuff is going to change even in the outlining process as you work out details. Never mind how much is going to change when you're actually writing the script itself. Because this is an interesting idea I had in my head with the original scripts, and interesting sounded to me, it changed significantly before we get to the end, and we're still not done yet. So definitely have as much written out before as you can, because so much of the art, even the music itself, other things, UI, will come out of how things are written. I mean, even the button choices was visible on the screen just as aesthetic fake buttons to look at, depending on the writing. Right. Another big software hack, or hack you could say, would be to actually pay your contractors. There's a lot of downsides to trying to get free labor, even from your friends, sometimes especially from your friends, and lots of upsides. One big thing is you get to pay it forward. I mean, as male passing, straight passing, all these different privileges I have, that's salary I get that other people don't, especially here in the group. So that's money I can then pass on to people not as fortunate as me, not as lucky as me, and just pay that forward. And it's definitely the best way to get people who are much more skilled than you, because Emily can do music I couldn't pretend to do. Ariel and Rory can do art I couldn't pretend to do even after going to art school. Couldn't done the kind of writing that Lane and Ellen can do, especially since I didn't have the time for it either. And it also just feels really good to actually be able to pay somebody. I mean, I can't tell you how much I'm still giddy about messages I got from one teammate, but how much me paying them for their work for one of their first big freelance gigs made a huge difference to them personally. And at the same point, if you don't have that much money to work with, and you always have only a limited amount, not unlimited funds, make a point of lowering your scope before lowering your budget. Because not only is lowering your scope mean you're more likely to actually get the project done, but much more affordable at the same time. So it's one thing we did was not try and do, say, for example, fancy animations or full-on high CG art or 50 or 100,000 word visual novel. Get it all down to something much more manageable. Even then, it still ran over. All right, talking about art, you want to make sure you have some detailed direction, but not so much you don't leave room for the artist to have creative interpretations. After all, you're hiring them for their expertise. Just like you wouldn't want to have someone at work manager telling you which sorting algorithm to use, whether to use spaces versus tabs. We'll make sure to do the same thing for your artists and other teammates. You'd be amazed how much better stuff they can come up with than you even could have imagined. So leaving room there in your outline, in your expectations especially, for pleasant surprises, like Bob Ross's little happy trees, the better. Definitely always budget for more art than you think you're going to need, because things will change down the road, especially when you do back and forth teamwork, require art you did not expect, and not require art you had expected. Right, all goes for music as well. This interface, just 2 highlights for the game jam context. Make sure people testing it regularly, people who haven't used it, because you're going to get used to something and not notice what's not intuitive very quickly, and leave lots of time to tweak it. We're still definitely doing lots of tweaking on Anthrotari to make it much more sometimes authentic to the imagined 90s experience, also making it actually useful. Okay, water break. Okay, definitely, especially in the context of a game jam, we have very little time. Make sure you have contracts prepared beforehand, ideally all signed away before you even start the game jam. Because usually nothing in a jam about not doing your contracts beforehand, even if you're not supposed to do any writing or coding or stuff beforehand. And you're using contracts, right? Because nothing makes things less stressful than having contract expectations laid out, especially with friends, because you don't want to have to be surprised by expectations. That in deadlines, explicit deadlines, help make things move along in a way that whenever you can, quote unquote, doesn't. That is something I didn't do right with Anthrotari, was not having more contracts. So I definitely made a point of having the contracts, getting them all signed away before paying money or asking for any work. Not so much on getting contracts to them in a timely fashion. So when I do that again, it's going to be contracts all lined up and then jam, all that. And of course, paying it front first. All right. And one thing when it comes to game jams, especially a longer one like ILU jam for a whole 30 days, it can be staying motivated. External accountability is a huge help here. So, for example, I told people on social media I was doing the jam, told them what I was doing specifically. I'll have people expecting the game. I even proposed other post-mortem talks to other events like DexCon and Metatopia over in New Jersey, even before the jam even started. So I was on the hook for game jam post-mortem, didn't even have a game. That's definitely a huge motivator. Right? You can always post regular screenshots and works in progress to social media and other places to get those likes, get those help there. And paying contractors again comes up, because when you've already put hundreds of dollars into a project, the last thing you want to do is just throw your hands up and give up. something that kind of loss aversion we're all inclined towards, you can make actually work for you. And you definitely want to track your small wins. For example, I don't worry so much about getting to a certain chapter in the game or getting so far in progress so much as I worry about how much time I've spent on the game, how many words I've written, quantifiable things that I can do in small amounts without I actually feel like I got some progress. Because knowing I put in 4 hours, say, at night after work, might not look like much, especially if I'm refactoring code. But if I'm tracking those hours, that's something I know I did. I can show myself that I did. I feel like I'm being productive, even if there's no obvious external productivity there. You may want to check out the Pomodoro technique in particular, which I find incredibly useful. That's Pomodoro, Pomodoro technique. Remember, too, that no great work is ever finished, only abandoned, to quote somebody. And you're never going to feel ready. Your game is actually ready. At the same time, you can hold up the option to add more stuff later. We ended up only getting a demo out for Anthrotari into 30 days. That's fine. We still got a whole demo out, which is a lot more than I've done before. And I've already gone and talked to 2 other writers about additional content for Anthrotari. Even had one of the writers, reach out to me with their latest update during the conference today. All right. You definitely want to avoid burnout. Just like with your day job, it's very easy to get burned out on side projects. The last thing you want to do is do that. It's something you're supposed to be voluntary. And same for your teammates as well. Don't expect more of them than they can possibly do. And if you, the producer, director, person in charge of the game, burns out, that can mean the whole project coming to a dead stop. And we may have some of the consequences of burnout. You'll see things like you get snippy. You'll see shortness with your teammates. You can ruin relationships with people you want to work with in the future. You can waste time and money on not making good critical decisions. So you might lose a day of progress to avoiding burnout. You might end up feel like that day at the beach without a phone was wasted. But that's definitely what I did near the end of the project, to take a whole day off and purposely avoid the project. And I felt dramatically better afterward and easily saved more than 8 hours, more than 10 hours of work on actually being productive and effective the rest of that sprint, rest of that jam. So definitely plan, include breaks in your schedule. I've done things like NaNoWriMo before. I've always made a point, National Novel Writing Month, of planning for breaks, for days off, to avoid that burnout. One thing that's easy to forget is that you can sell your game after a jam, even if it's just a jam game. You'd be amazed at the stuff that gets through Steam Greenlight already. You can put up on itch.io for sale, even without Steam Greenlight. I've already got one person gave me $1 for just the demo, so even the demo can make money, to my pleasant surprise. And any money you make off the game is money you can then use to fund your next game, not to mention pay more developers and whatnot to pay forward, not to mention free up time for you to do more dev work. Just make sure you have realistic expectations for a game. I know I've got a Patreon, patreon.com/thirdtruck for the game. It actually has some backers, but I've been pleasantly surprised at each one, as opposed to expecting a certain amount of patronage there. So definitely want to have a mindset of pleasant surprise versus expecting anything of your game, especially because there's so much competition out there. All right, tactical takeaways. Make sure you have a mailing list. For example, Anthrotari, ANTHROTARI.com/mailing/pound-mailing-list. There's a mailing list sign up there, right there on the homepage. Because the last thing you want to do is get someone's attention, get them excited, and have to find them again later to know the game is actually available for sale. And I've seen this across indie writing, indie publishing, game development, pretty much any publishing space. Make sure you have a mailing list set up. Mailchimp is pretty good for this. Be ready to pay also for other services like GitHub and Dropbox, because even a few dollars, even if you're going to use it for 48 hours, that $7 you might use for a month subscription can save hours of time you don't otherwise have. Consider too paying for non-game services like laundry, outsource cleaning, food if you have to, healthy food, not too much pizza, and other things that you would otherwise do yourself on the weekend or during the month, because that hour, those 2 hours you don't spend doing laundry, those 2 hours you have out of only 24 or 48 to work on that game. All right, and now where to get the game and contact me. Information right here. Website is anthrotari.com. You can get demo online right now, thirdtruck.itch.io. Find me on Twitter at thirdtruck, THIRDTRUCK. My personal website, jcholder.com, or you can email me directly at jc@biggestrobot.com. Thank you all for the talk, and very forward to seeing you all next time.